Welcome to the CFL 3-Down Breakdown. I'm Ian Cameron for Sportsbook Review, as always, joined by Andrew Mcinnis. And we are fired up because the regular season, it's a long one, 20 weeks. The last couple weeks, it's a matter of who's in, who's out, who cares about playing hard, who cares about winning, and who doesn't. That's a tough way to handicap. That's a tough way to make money in any sport. I mean, handicapping the CFL the last couple weeks of the regular season like it's NFL Week 17 is not fun. This is fun. Playoffs have arrived. Teams care. Teams are coming to play. The race to win the Grey Cup is on. The division semifinals kick off this weekend. They will be Toronto and Calgary are the teams that will be awaiting the winners. Toronto with a bye to the East final, winning first in the East. And, of course, Calgary clinched first in the West weeks ago. They will be awaiting the winner of the West semifinal. We've got Saskatchewan and Ottawa in the East semifinal. And Edmonton taking on Winnipeg in the West semifinal. Winnipeg hosting the game, Ottawa hosting the game. Saskatchewan's the crossover team to the east. So maybe it's an advantage for the Roughriders. We've talked about it all year once again, how the West Division has been superior once again to the East. Does that mean an advantage for Saskatchewan? We'll have to wait and see. But Andrew, let's get right to it. We'll start with that East semifinal, 1 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. Saskatchewan Roughriders traveling to the nation's capital to take on the Ottawa Redblacks. Again, no lines. Again, there's a question of quarterback for Saskatchewan. A performance-related decision coming for Chris Jones. Will he go with the veteran, Kevin Glenn? Will he go with Brandon Bridge, the younger, a more athletic quarterback, I guess you could say, and maybe even a stronger arm? I mean, we've seen Brandon Bridge. Does he go with the steady arm, the steady hand, the veteran experience of Kevin Glenn? That is the decision ahead of Chris Jones leading up to this football game between the Roughriders and the Redblacks. Of course, when you look at this Saskatchewan Roughriders team, it's a team that really played pretty good football after the first month or so of the season when they started to struggle, when they struggled early, and then things were able to turn around for the Roughriders. Got better and better, I found, on the defensive side of the football. When you look at these two teams in terms of their overall stats, Saskatchewan averaging 28.3 points per game, 375 yards per game offensively. Very good stopping the run. 82 yards per game allowed, 96 yards per game, rather, allowed on the ground for Saskatchewan. Same thing goes with Ottawa. Two good teams stopping the run. The big difference is Ottawa's secondary has been picked on a little bit at times this season. Ottawa's given up 316 yards per game through the air. Product of that, really, too, down the stretch has been the loss of Jarrell Gavins, maybe their best cornerback. With that leg injury, he is considered questionable for this game. And when you look at guys in terms of key injuries, and you always want to know who's in and who's out, now that we're in the playoffs, it's been a long regular season. There's a lot of guys that are playing through injuries, playing at less than 100%. Something you're going to want to be aware of. You've got Naaman Roosevelt, who's questionable for this game, with a concussion. Is he going to suit up? He's a key receiver for Saskatchewan. That's one name you want to be aware of. Again, on the Ottawa Redblacks side, Jarrell Gavins, is he going to be back? That's a big question. From a receiver standpoint, we know the loss of Brad Sinopoli for the Ottawa Redblacks has been a very big one and a tough one to overcome. They're going to have to look to Greg Ellingson to shoulder more of the load, Jerron Kreiner to shoulder more of the load. Josh Stangby, guys like that, they're going to have to step up in this receiving core because Brad Sinopoli is one of those over-the-middle safety valve options that Trevor Harris has had at the quarterback spot for the Ottawa Redblacks over the last several weeks. Deontay Spencer's been a big addition, his production's improved as of late, and he has been big for Ottawa. I mean, you look at the numbers for him. He's been good in kick returning. He's been good in receiver. He's a fast up guy. And Deontay Spencer's become more of a weapon offensively for Ottawa. I'm sure they're going to use him. William Powell running the football on the ground. Certainly things you're going to want to watch for in this game. Saskatchewan, when you think about the season series between these two teams, now that we're into the playoffs, we like to go back to see how these teams fared against one another during the regular season. Tight games. And that's the one thing that stands out. In fact, Ottawa 2-0 against the spread in the two head-to-head meetings against Saskatchewan this year. Saskatchewan coming from behind to nip Ottawa 18-17 here in Ottawa back on September 29th in a game that Saskatchewan, got off to a real slow start. And that was a game with Ryan Lindley, by the way, at quarterback for Ottawa in that football game. Wasn't Trevor Harris, wasn't Drew Tate. It's when they were going through injuries with both of those guys, and Lindley was in at the quarterback spot. Saskatchewan beats them. Then on October 13th, a tremendous, incredible comeback for Ottawa / Saskatchewan collapse late in that game. Ottawa rallies from late fourth quarter deficit and beats Saskatchewan 33-32, covers the number in victory as well in that game. Great job by Trevor Harris. So that's the thing. I mean, Trevor Harris, when he was in at quarterback for Ottawa against the Saskatchewan team, they did move the ball. They did have some success offensively. So this is the game I probably have a lesser opinion on of the two division semifinals. I've got to see what a number is from a side or total perspective to get involved. Get the job done, and that simply was not the case. The Ottawa Redblacks in that Snow Bowl last year, if you remember, that was a whiteout. The Eskimos and the Redblacks last year in that East semifinal in Ottawa, and Ottawa gets the job done over the Eskimos. So it's not a shoo-in that even though Saskatchewan, probably the better defense, definitely from the better division top to bottom, it's not a shoo-in that they go into Ottawa and beat them. Remember, Ottawa beat Edmonton in that East semifinal last year. Ottawa went to the Grey Cup last year. You cannot completely overlook or write off this Redblacks team. So it's a very fascinating game. Very fascinating game. I think even when the lines come out, I'm not going to have a strong opinion on this game. We'll see where the number is, but it's a good one to talk about. I'll try to make a case for Saskatchewan, but it's going to have to be a situation where the line is right for me to pull the trigger. Andrew, your thoughts? East semifinal, Roughriders, Redblacks in Ottawa.
Yeah, it's about time the playoffs came upon us, and I'm ready to go here. We've got our Eastern finals and semifinals, and this is what I'm saying for this game. I think that Saskatchewan is a way different team on the road, Ian. I think the huge blow of Brad Sinopoli being gone and out for the year for Ottawa is a huge factor in this game. But I think that Ottawa is a playoff team. They're gamers. They're teams that are going to step up. Trevor Harris, players like him can really rise to the occasion. But I do think that with Brad Sinopoli being out, Ian, it puts a lot more pressure on Greg Ellingson and those other receivers that don't usually need that extra attention. So now there's going to be double coverage possibly on Greg Ellingson, which is going to cause a lot of confusion at the quarterback position for Ottawa. But in my eyes, I still think that the play on this game, Ian, would be the over. I think that Western division teams have really destroyed the East this year. I mean, it's been no matchup, really. The West has been a far, far more superior division, far more superior conference, if you look at it. So Saskatchewan coming in my eyes, are just already favorites to just demolish Ottawa simply because they're in the West Division. Now, obviously, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but looking at this Ottawa team, they're coming in right now with 3 wins in a row coming into this playoffs. They've really put things together. And a lot of the times, Ian, that is what it's about, momentum coming into these playoffs. So looking at this explosive team that we see from Saskatchewan, I expect to see more out of them, really pushing the tempo on this Ottawa team. I think Ottawa, if they're going to win this game, they're going to want it to be a little bit lower scoring. Saskatchewan, again, they don't play as well on the road. They're not really opening up as many points on the road. But I think, guys, the lean for this game, this is my I'm more strong on the Winnipeg versus Edmonton game, but the lean on this game for me would definitely be the over, Ian.
Yeah, I think it's got a chance to go over. I think Ottawa, especially at home, Ottawa, you look at what they've done offensively, pretty good on this home field and coming into this game in very good form offensively. I mean, Trevor Harris really played some of his better games late in the season. BC, 30 points, 33 points against Saskatchewan, 41 points against Hamilton. So this was an Ottawa offense that really found their footing, 3 straight overs to end the season. Saskatchewan, again, very, very solid defensively. You can't take anything away from what they've done on that side of the football at the defensive end. The way they shut down Bo Levi Mitchell in Calgary a few weeks ago, and that 30-7 win was exemplary. Duron Carter, we haven't talked about him yet, but his dual ability on both sides of the ball, lining him up as a receiver and a DB, and the just a tremendous athleticism and ability to be able to do that, to have the stamina, the gas in your tank to play that, to be on the field for that many snaps on both sides of the football. That's pretty impressive, and that tells you what what a gym rat, what a athletic, crazy athletic ability that Duron Carter has, and it's been able to work. And again, since Duron Carter's been in that secondary and teamed with Ed Gainey, who's already one of the better cornerbacks in the CFL, it makes Saskatchewan a little bit dangerous now in terms of throwing the football against them. Not as easy to do that when you've got guys in the secondary that are capable of making plays, and that's what we have definitely seen so far from Saskatchewan since they inserted Carter into that defensive backfield. So this is an interesting game for me for sure. You look at the meeting when Trevor Harris was in there, that speaks to the overlean for Andrew. 33-32 football game that was, whereas that 18-17 game, albeit it was in Ottawa, you had Ryan Lindley at quarterback, and if you saw the couple of games that Lindley started for the Redblacks, it was not pretty. His games against Winnipeg or this Saskatchewan team, that's when Ottawa's offense simply did not click. So this is going to be an interesting game. Again, it depends on the number. If it's Ottawa +3, because Ottawa was +3 at home against Saskatchewan in the first meeting, +3 on the road against Saskatchewan in the second meeting. If they're an underdog of any kind, I'm probably not going to be looking to take Saskatchewan as a favorite. I would need them in the underdog role to consider the Roughriders side in this particular situation. So again, we'll see where the number comes out. Try to make a case for Saskatchewan. Andrew leaning to the over in that game. Roughriders, Redblacks. Andrew, any last comments on this game before we move on to the West semi?
Well, just a quick thought about that. I mean, I usually don't mention that stats are so important, especially going into the playoffs. I mean, sometimes the past can be the past, Ian. History is history. Going into the playoffs, it's kind of, two teams, they're refreshed, they're heading to the playoffs. But you really do have to kind of just bring up that stat you mentioned again, Ian, where both times these two teams met this season, the score was divided. It was a 1-point victory for whoever won, and both teams won on the road versus each other. So, I mean, that's a big stat. I mean, looking at the underdog, whoever comes out as this underdog could possibly be the play, because I think this game is going to be a close and tight game. So it's going to be interesting to see what the odds makers, what kind of respect they give each team. Because like you said, Ian, if that creeps up to anywhere +3.5, something like that, you have to expect Ottawa to keep this game close. I expect this game to be a pretty entertaining game, which is why I think in the end it will be a shootout and the over will cover.
Yeah, and the over, I think, cashed in last year. And remember, it was a blizzard, that Edmonton-Ottawa game. That was a fun football game to watch last year, the East semifinal, when it was just an absolute blizzard, whiteout conditions, Eskimos and Redblacks. Ottawa got the win. Can't overlook Ottawa. It's tough because Saskatchewan's that one team in the West that, if they're not on their A game, they are beatable. They've proven that. So interesting one to talk about there. We'll move on to the West semifinal. We've got the Edmonton Eskimos taking on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And I talk about this at least in the NHL. Team that goes into the playoffs red hot is a dangerous team. It doesn't matter if they're the 8 seed, the 7 seed, or if they're the number 1 or the number 2 seed. If you are going into the playoffs, playing your best and on a winning streak and feeling good and feeling confident, that's a team I like to back. It's a team I like to back in the NHL playoffs. It's a team usually I like to back in the NFL playoffs when they begin, a red-hot team that closed the regular season strong, and it's no different here in the CFL. And when I look at a red-hot team coming into these playoffs, I'm looking at the Edmonton Eskimos going into Winnipeg here in this game against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Winnipeg's got all kinds of question marks at the quarterback spot. Now, Matt Nichols is going to play, and that's huge. I mean, Matt Nichols is a very good quarterback. I don't take anything away from him. He gives them their best chance to win, with all due respect to Dan Lefevre, who managed the Blue Bomber offense well enough last week against Calgary, although Calgary's offense did absolutely nothing with Buckley in there. Buckley's mixture, it plays awful, and it does not work. Not like the cough syrup. So it's one of those situations where Andrew Buckley not doing a very good job last week. Yeah, for the for the Calgary Stampeders against a defense that in theory you should do pretty well against, and Andrew Buckley did not for the Calgary Stampeders last week. This is going to be a much taller order here for Winnipeg, taking on an Edmonton team that I've said this ever since they got CJ Gable to give them a real legitimate run threat. This is a balanced offense. It was too one-dimensional. It was too reliant on Mike Riley throwing the football for this Edmonton team early in the season. Gable, breath of new life, breath of fresh air, going from Hamilton to Edmonton, now a team in the postseason, and he ran hard, he ran tough, he ran strong. They opened up holes. The offensive line got healthier for the Eskimos. That was a big part of it. Let's not forget, Edmonton was dealing with some key injuries along that offensive front midway through the season. They started to get healthier there. And in terms of man games lost to injury, it's amazing all the amount of injuries this Edmonton team has had to withstand this season to still end up 12-6 on the season is really impressive. I mean, kudos to Jason Moss keeping this ship afloat. No team has had to deal with the amount of injuries. It's not even close. No team has had to deal with the amount of injuries in the CFL this season that Edmonton and head coach Jason Moss have had to deal with. And the fact that they're here, they righted the ship when the injuries were at its gravest, and they had the most injuries all season was that swoon that they went in where they lost 6 straight games and things were starting to go south for them. This is the ultimate streaky team. How about 7 wins to start the season? They then lose 6 in a row to go from 7-0 to 7-6. And now they've finished the season 5-0 straight up, 4-1 against the spread, 5 straight wins entering the playoffs, including 3 straight wins against West Division opponents, BC, Calgary, and Saskatchewan. They've outgained the opponent now in 6 straight games, so there is nothing at all fluky with what Edmonton's doing. And I love this Winnipeg team, and boy, they have a very good home field, a loud environment there at Investors Group Field. Surely it will be. This is going to be the first home playoff game in, 5-6 years, actually, for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers here at Investors Group Field. They'll be fired up. They'll be just absolutely ready for this football game, and I respect that home field. It's a tough place to win in, especially in the playoffs. That being said, I've got questions about this Winnipeg defense. It's not been a great unit from day one this season. That's been their Achilles heel. Getting stops, getting off the field on second down has been an issue for them all season. They've given up 30 points per game, or 418 yards per game given up by this Winnipeg team as well. That's not good. Edmonton's got better defensive numbers in terms of total yards per game allowed, in terms of passing yards per game allowed. Winnipeg's been shredded at times on that side of the ball, especially the last 3 games. You're looking at Winnipeg giving up 446 yards per game, 333 through the air. In the last 3 games of the regular season, Edmonton has given up 320 yards per game on defense. Winnipeg's given up 446. There is a massive, massive discrepancy in terms of the stats with the Eskimos and the Blue Bombers on the defensive side of the football, and that's going to make me concerned about looking to lay points here with Winnipeg. I know it's a very good football team. It's offensively capable, although, again, they haven't scored they've only scored 1 offensive touchdown, this Winnipeg Blue Bombers team, in their last 2 games combined. That's a little bit of a concern for me moving forward into this football game. And Matt Nichols has been in and out of the lineup. When is the last time Matt Nichols has played a full football game, full 60 minutes from start to finish? It's been a while. You do get concerned that he hasn't had those reps. You do get concerned that he hasn't had a game where he's taken all the snaps from start to finish in forever, it seems. I think it was the Toronto game on October 21st. The BC game, he gets injured. The Calgary game last week, he doesn't play. You're now talking about a guy that's been not in game action now from start to finish in a game for going on 3 weeks. That is something to factor in here for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. We'll see where the number comes out. I was saying to Andrew before the show began, I think you're going to see Winnipeg in that 4 to 6 point home favorite range. They're going to get some kind of respect because that is a tough home field, Investors Group Field, and it's always loud. They'll be fired up for this playoff game when Winnipeg hasn't had a home playoff game in many years. That being said, I'll be looking pretty strong at Edmonton plus the points here in this game. They're red hot. They're playing too well. I think it's a close game either way. Edmonton grabbing the points, and I'll grab as many points as I can when this line comes out. That'll probably be the strongest opinion, strongest lean I have in terms of side or total with the CFL playoffs this weekend. Andrew, your thoughts on this one?
Ian, I completely agree with you when you said that it's, sometimes momentum is a huge factor in how teams are coming in steaming hot from the regular season, entering these playoffs. And I think this Edmonton Eskimos team has been the epitomal team of that example where they've been so up and down, but they've had these streaks develop, and injuries have been a huge factor. I mean, they've dealt with a handful of injuries throughout this season as we've gone on. But starting off this season on their 7-0 win streak, this team looked like they were going to go undefeated all the way up until the Grey Cup, Ian, and then boom, all of a sudden, 0-5 in their next 5 games. And I think that's kind of where Winnipeg caught them. Winnipeg actually took them in two of the games they played them this year, but that's also because some injuries that Edmonton had. But for me, coming into this game, Edmonton, for me, is the play. I think that they're far more depth. Look at last week's game. They had 7 different guys with at least 15 yards receiving, or their depth is just way too much for anyone to handle, in my opinion. On the other side for the Bombers, though, the biggest issue I have with the Bombers is that they know how to put up points, Ian. They just don't know how to defend. I mean, the defense has always been a question for you and I as we've gone on through this year. And this week, I think it's really going to prevent them from moving on to the division finals. This Bombers team is not going to be able to allow 30, 35, 40 points and still able to get the W. But they have been a team, this Bombers team, I will say, it's notable to mention that they have been a team that's been in a lot of close games. Looking back to week 18, they had a loss 29-28 versus the Argos. Week 7, 33-30 win versus the Redblacks. Week 6, 41-40 win versus Montreal. Week 5, 45-42 win versus the Lions. Week 2, 43-40. So stuff like that, it just goes to show that they know how to win close games as well. So in my opinion, this Edmonton team is going to move on. They're a playoff team. Mike Riley is at his peak right now. This team is playing their best football of the entire year so far. I think they move on. I think they beat Calgary next week as well. But we won't get too carried away so far quite yet. But in my opinion, I think unless Andrew Harris really develops that run game for Winnipeg, I mean, let's face it, he's huge. We've got CJ Gable on the side for the Eskimos now and making them a hell of a lot better. But I think Andrew Harris will play a huge factor in this game for the Bombers. If he gets his run game going, if he's kind of lining up in the slot and is able to make some catches, make some plays, keep the defense guessing, it might help them out a little bit. But this should be a good game, Ian, but Edmonton's definitely my play. Their depth is it's just way too strong, I think. They have positional players really all over the field. Their defense is extraordinarily better than Winnipeg heading into this matchup. I think the past couple weeks it's looked way stronger. So unless it's going to be an absolute shootout, I think Edmonton is the play.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where this total comes out. You had a 57.5 and a 58 in the 2 games between these 2 teams earlier in the season. One game just barely got over the total, 33-26, the other 28-19. And it is worth noting, I know Winnipeg got the better of beat Edmonton twice, 2-0 straight up, 2-0 against the spread. That's the one caveat here. Winnipeg did beat Edmonton and covered twice against them during the regular season, but that was when Edmonton was in their swoon. That was when their injury situation was at its gravest, at its darkest moment that it was all season long. This is not the Edmonton team we saw down the stretch. Winnipeg got Edmonton when they were at their most vulnerable. That's not the case now. Edmonton's, they got Gable now. They didn't have him then. Balanced offense. The defense got Grimes back. Great point there by Brett Patterson in the chat there, talking about Aaron Grimes coming back. Absolutely, that's a big addition. Coming back from the NFL, insulating that secondary, which was a weak point early in the season. That's going to help. Total-wise is going to be very interesting. I think there could be value on the under in this game if it opens in that 57.5, 58 range. I know Winnipeg, early in the season, they were a tough team to bet under at that kind of number. But again, the offense has not been as crisp down the stretch. Nichols in and out, in and out, in and out of the lineup. Will he have that sharpness? Will he have that rhythm and chemistry with the offense? I'm not 100% sure about that. So very interesting. There could be value on the under if it opens in that high 50s. But Andrew and I agree. We're looking at Edmonton plus the points. I think as hot, probably the hottest team of any team in the CFL heading into the playoffs, feeling good with momentum. That's something worth riding this Sunday when they head to the Peg in the West Division semifinal. That's going to wrap it up for the 3-down breakdown for our look at the division semifinals. I'm Ian Cameron for Sportsbook Review. As always, check out sportsbookreview.com. Live odds, free picks, live odds, free picks, sportsbook rating guide. Check out the links below this video for all of SBR's social media platforms, and give us a thumbs up if you like the show. We've got Big Man and Donnie coming up with the right side of campus. We'll see you next week. And at McInnis Picks for Andrew, at Bobano for me, we'll have our official 3-down breakdown playoff best bets posted later in the week, as usual, Thursday or Friday. Right side of campus coming up. For Andrew McInnis, I'm Ian Cameron for Sportsbook Review. Enjoy the division semifinals this Sunday. We're back next Tuesday with another edition of the 3-down breakdown.